Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to MovieFilm. It's episode 308, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I'm Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Hey, this is our first regular show of 2025.
Yeah, and what a show! I
was gonna ask, anything new in Hollywood since the last time I talked to you?
I know. I was just thinking. I feel sort of like crusty, sort of like a kind of a feeling probably in my voice this week. It's been crazy. I mean, for over a week. I mean, timestamp. It's January 16th of 2025, and for over a week, Los Angeles has been suffering from a series of fires.
Yeah.
And some of the largest and most destructive in its history. It's I mean, I've been out here for wildfires before, and they're always bad, of course, but this is just I've been out here for over 20 years, and this is a whole other level, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, these stats might be old, but I was kind of looking into it, and apparently 56 square miles so far have been burned up. And for comparison, Manhattan is 22 square miles.
Jeez.
So, I mean, thousands and thousands of structures just leveled to the ground, and dozens of people have died. It's one of those things where it's, you know, the TV just becomes 24-hour news coverage. I mean, it's what's happening, and you don't know from neighborhood to neighborhood what's going on or how people are doing. And one day your sky could be blue, and you know that the Palisades are being leveled. You know, people I know have lost their homes, and your neighborhood, it just seems completely normal. And then 2 days later, over in my neighborhood, I'm in Sherman Oaks, and my brother and his wife are in Tarzana. All of a sudden, there's the Palisades fire was approaching, and we were getting warnings on our phones, and people on the news were saying, you know, people in our area should get out. And I sent you a picture. I mean, you could see the glowing orange smoke on a hill out my window. And it's
I was expecting the big saucer mothership from Independence Day to be right behind.
You sent me that, and it made me laugh. It was it's been like weird emotional whiplash in a way, you know. And it's just, and so that was speaking. What happened over here was I got out and evacuated, and really did take a last look. Like, well, I think I grabbed everything I can, and this doesn't look great, you know. And I'm very thankful to say that what happened in my neck of the woods is, man, those firefighters went at it. Like, it was on the news. They had those helicopters and those special planes, and they dropped a whole line of fire retardant down and just built a wall or a line in the sand, so to speak. And it worked. It worked, and they stopped it in its tracks. And then, you know, the other problem, and what's made this so catastrophic out here, is there's been just crazy high winds, like record winds for this month. I mean, up to, I think they said at Bob Hope Airport, they recorded 80-mile-per-hour winds. So of course you have these embers in the air, and they're flying everywhere. But any sort of little flare up that happened outside of that perimeter that they set up, there were helicopters just dousing them. And so it's weird. I feel very thankful, you know, things worked out over here, and I was able to come back. But at the same time, I know that in other neighborhoods, people's lives have been completely upended.
Yeah.
And so it's been a weird emotional sort of time in this area down here.
It's definitely been bracing to see, you know, these sort of helicopter views of just what appears post-apocalyptic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, it's sort of an exercise in your ability to be empathetic, you know, really. Like, if you're a human being, you say, oh my God, I hope no lives are lost. I hope people are okay. I hope they're able to get through this. And that's been the most sort of frustrating thing, at least for me, is to at a glance on social media. And admittedly, I haven't spent a ton of time on social media, but a lot of the, well, they had it coming kind of stuff.
You know, I've seen responses to that thing, but I can't say I've seen that specifically. But sort of, I think what you're saying is what people were saying, oh, it's all just rich people or celebrities, right? And it's like fine to watch their houses burn down. But obviously, the majority of people that live out here are not
Exactly
rich and celebrities. It's, yeah.
I think these types of circumstances, be they wildfires in California or hurricanes in Florida or anywhere else, I mean, I would hope that you take this stuff in and you imagine yourself in that situation,
right?
And you hope for the best, and you also sort of grapple with the inherent powerlessness we have, as human beings, in the certain events are just simply beyond our ability to stand in their way.
Yeah. It definitely did give me a new perspective on that sort of thing, where, I mean, you see, hurricane victims, or you see wildfires raging somewhere, and you do think that's terrible, and you see a house burnt to the ground and you think that's awful. But personally speaking, I haven't come this close before. Yeah. And it's a whole different frame of mind where you're opening up a suitcase and truly like, I guess I need this and I need this and I can live without that, and I say that again, I don't want to be over dramatic, because thankfully things worked out in my neck of the woods, but it did put a whole new perspective. It painted a whole new perspective for me. And it's something that I will take with me. And I've always hoped I've had empathy for people in these sort of disaster situations, but I know I'll have an extra sort of level of experience and sympathy, I think, from having been like, oh, I mean, those people went through that and they didn't get to go back. That's something that's worth underscoring. I mean, yes, there are wildfires every year, and that is unfortunately sort of a fact of life in California, whether southern where you are, northern where I am. But this stuff is getting worse, and not to belabor the point, but you might say the climate is changing. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like this, and I think the thing to understand about that is that, yes, like there's been some weird circumstances starting these fires, right? Yeah. But the thing to also understand is what has allowed so much fuel on the earth, to make these fires more, the ability to have these fires spread like they did in an unusual time of year, because it's been so damn dry. It's really something to think about, and to want to hopefully try to figure out whatever it is, as little or as big as possible, what can we do about that?
I think human beings walking with a little humility is not the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe that's a tone deaf thing right now, given just the times in which we live. But these types of moments, at least for me, are very bracing reminders of, like, sometimes the earth got its own plans.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I mean, speaking of humanity, I do want to bring up, it's been, first of all, it was incredible. I couldn't believe how many people reached out to me. People from all over the globe, actually, and friends and family and listeners reached out to me. Like, it meant the world to me, and I really, really appreciate that. Like, sorry, now it was very touching.
That's awesome.
But what's also been nice is, as much as there's been really frustrating and ugly conversation around this stuff too, and finger pointing, maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I mean, that time will come, but it's been really lovely to see LA's heart, I suppose, in this moment, where as soon as these things were happening, so much over social media and in my little circles, I was seeing people like, how can I help? Or here's how you can help. Not just making sure people knew where they could donate clothes, and even offering opportunities for you to lend a hand, and here's where you can come and help if you really want to try to do something. And it, I think a lot of times LA has this sort of reputation, or is perceived as this, Hollywoody kind of fake persona kind of place. And I understand that, but Los Angeles is a huge place made up of a lot of different diverse neighborhoods and people. And it's an amazing place. And it was really lovely to see everybody come together like a neighborhood, like a giant neighborhood. It was really heartening to see. So I definitely want to call that out. That was a nice thing to feel.
So it seems like, fingers crossed, at the moment, things are maybe coming down a little bit.
Yeah, it feels that way. It's, I definitely don't want to speak as an authority on it, because it's weird how it went from 24-hour news coverage to knowing exactly what was going on to now I'm having to seek it out a little bit. But yeah, it seems like containment's going up on the two largest fires. But it's also worth noting, a lot of people were forced to evacuate, and they still have not been let back into their neighborhoods to check in on things. So,
oh man, scary.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that the containments are getting better, but there's still a lot of people that are in the thick of it at the moment. So,
well, I'm assuming you haven't had a chance to watch a ton of stuff, given.
Well, you'd be surprised. No, it's not necessarily over this past week, but last we really talked about current things was Mufasa. Back at the end of 2024. So there has been a few.
By the way, I mean, worth mentioning with regards to Mufasa, I mean, that's a movie that you and I, our feelings notwithstanding, it was written off as a flop weeks before it came out.
Right.
And it has ended up being, in fact, a substantial success for Disney.
Yeah, well, and even opening weekend, everyone was like, well, writing's on the wall right there. But no, it had legs, and it makes sense. It's not performing like the first one. I think the first one blew everybody's minds, being like $1 billion movie. But it's definitely found its audience, and I think you could call it a success, at least in 2024 math.
Well, that too is kind of interesting, right? Because you and I, we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about how, there is an overabundance of sequels and whatnot. And, audiences are hungry for something new. And yet when you look at the top 20 movies of the year just passed, almost to the one, they are sequels, prequels, and remakes.
Yeah.
With the rare exception. Like I'm just pulling it up right now. Number one movie of last year was Inside Out 2. Number 20 is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Wow. And
in between, you got, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, Beetlejuice. And many of these are good movies, by the way.
Yeah.
This is, but in other words, there is sort of this conventional wisdom that, like, oh, nobody wants to see this stuff anymore. Well, clearly they do.
I know. I say, why not both? Like the girl in the commercial. Like you make the sequels more of the thing that we love, of course, because I really enjoyed Beetlejuice last year. And at the same time, we need to make new things so we can have more sequels.
More
right?
things to remake later.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of why not both?
I will say this. I was at the movie theater last night, and they had a trailer for Marvel's Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I've seen that trailer before, but seeing that trailer at our current moment, it ended, and I was like, I am ready for that movie right now.
Yeah.
I was like, I need that right now.
I think whatever circumstances made this happen, good or bad, I think it was nice for us to get a little bit of a break from Marvel at the theaters. And now it's been a minute, and we're like, oh yeah, that thing. I like how that thing tastes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, by the way, I wasn't going to bring this up, but Barry Jenkins, who we were saying watching Mufasa, I think where we landed was it's not bad. It just doesn't feel special.
It wasn't what it could have been.
Exactly. And we were like, it didn't even feel like it could have or could have not been written and directed by Barry Jenkins. It just was, Lion King product 2024. However, I don't know if you caught this, but there was a movie called The Fire Inside, which
no, I want to see that.
Yeah, it didn't really catch on. I think I don't know. It just kind of got lost in the awards movie shuffle. But this
Yeah.
was written by Barry Jenkins, and
Okay.
it's a true story about an Olympic boxer Clarissa Shields. And I just want to mention that I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I've never met a boxing movie I didn't like.
Mhm.
It's always an underdog tale. It always does the trick, and you're always kind of cheering and pumping your fist by the end. And this one's no different. Um, it's half sports film, but the other half is taking a look at the life of an Olympic athlete who performs well and maybe even gets a medal, but can barely afford groceries when they go back to real life. They're not Michael Phelps.
Yeah. Right.
And that's kind of what this movie is. And I don't know, it flew under the radar, and I thought it was pretty solid. So I just want to give it a mention.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I do want to catch that.
Yeah. And just, speaking of Barry Jenkins, I guess.
Mhm.
He didn't direct it, but he wrote it. But yeah, I did catch a couple things I'll mention real quick. It's just so funny how these things just feel sort of like in the past now. I don't know if it's just this past week and how much it feels like time is.
You've lived about 7 years in the last 7 days.
Yeah. I know anyway. So A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie, James Mangold, Timothy Chalamet. It's interesting. I feel like there was a lot of buildup for this one, but it didn't make a huge impact when it
didn't,
dropped.
right? That was my sense too.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you compare it to Bohemian Rhapsody. Again, it was a Queen biopic movie that made $1 billion freaking dollars, right? And even Walk the Line, which James Mangold made. This just kind of happened, and I think the people who are going to check it out checked it out, and I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it does with the Oscar nominations. But speaking of the movie itself, I really enjoyed it. It's kind of unique. I mean, I think you and I had talked about ever since Walk Hard has come out, which is a parody of Walk the Line, James Mangold's own.
See, I was going to ask, does it pass the Walk Hard test?
For me, it does. And I think it does because not that you can't still do that kind of movie, but I think you need to be a little bit more mindful about not making those beats like now he's addicted, now he's over it, now he's, like you just can't think those beats are enough because they all feel like tropes now. Parody style tropes. But this movie is very different. It's a vibes movie. Like it's a hang movie, which was a little surprising. It just it does take you over the course of Bob Dylan's kind of arrival on the scene, his rise, and then it goes up to basically the moment where he goes electric, going from acoustic music to electric music, which was electric guitar, which was a big, I knew this before seeing the movie. I knew this was a big deal. Ooh, when Bob went electric, but I didn't really know what that meant or who it affected or who cared. And that's the course we're charting here, but it's not really into the minutia of it. Like it just kind of travels along, drops in on some bigger moments. And it really is, like I say, a hang movie, because a lot of times it'll be like, well, here's where he met Joan Baez. And in that moment, it's him singing on stage, but it's not, a quarter of the song. It's the whole song. And so almost any time anyone sings in this movie, we stop the movie for 3 to 4 minutes and experience the entire song.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just a whole different tempo, I think, than your typical biopic. And for that reason...
And this is Chalamet singing.
Yeah, and he's really good.
Because he's going to be the musical guest on SNL when he hosts.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. And I mean, and it's not just someone with an iconic voice, it's someone with an iconic voice that gets parodied a lot. So how do you do that without sounding like you're just parodying the Bob Dylan voice, kind of thing? And I thought he did a really good job. And I just feel like I got dropped into the 60s, hung out with this enigmatic guy for a little bit, and then got out and just sort of got to experience that moment in time. I think that's what this movie does well. But I do have to say, I saw it with a friend and he did not like it as much.
Really?
For those very reasons. He was like, I don't know what what was that about? And also, I don't feel like I understand Bob Dylan any more than I did when we started. And I would say the same. And he does remain true to its title, A Complete Unknown. by the end of it. But there's clues in there you can kind of pick up on. Oh, maybe he's not exactly the person. He's trying to build a myth for himself, and maybe that's not exactly true. I don't know. I kind of enjoyed just observing him for a little bit and then bopping out. And I was even like, I wouldn't mind watching that again at some point. I could see just wanting to hang, sort of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I guess, like just kind of hang in that era with those characters for a little bit and enjoy the music again. So for me, it was a success. But to be fair, you know, my friend did, for those reasons that I liked it, he didn't like it or feel like he got a lot out of it. So but yeah, I enjoyed that. And then also I checked out, I have two more here. I saw Nosferatu.
Oh, okay, man. This is another one I've been hoping to catch.
Isn't that funny? Because you and I aren't big horror people.
Right.
Right. And even Robert Eggers, I haven't really watched a lot of his stuff because I know there's just sort of maybe they're not in your face gory horror, but they're real under the skin.
Yeah.
Make you uncomfortable, unpleasant kind of feels. And I'm not always down for that, but something about this I thought might be kind of interesting. And I have to say, I like this one a lot too. And this is another one where it's a real vibes movie.
Okay.
It's very moody, very dreamlike at times in the first act when Nicholas Holt's character is first meeting Nosferatu. It's very dreamlike feel.
See, I screened the original, the silent film in my film classes.
Well, then I'd be really curious what you think.
Which, you know, Count Orlok in that movie, the actor who played him, you know, his name was Max Schreck.
That's right. That's right.
See, I was the guy, when Batman Returns came out, I was, 12. I was like, I get that reference.
That's so funny. Waiting for the world to catch up with you.
It really was.
But no, I think speaking for you and I, this isn't typically our thing, but, I found myself just captivated by it, by its tone, by its artistry.
Wow,
The performances are really good. Bill Skarsgård is really, really, it's like a transformative role. He's completely this other entity, and it's really creepy. And Lily Rose Depp is all in and amazing in the way she's like contorting and.
Don't you feel kind of bad for Bill Skarsgård a little bit? Like he's got this particular box he's found himself stuck in.
Yeah, which very often he's giving these killer performances, but we're not actually seeing his face.
Yeah.
But he's really good at it. And unfortunately, I mean, I guess he had the Crow remake recently, which just didn't hit. But
didn't do much, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this one. I mean, it's not a gore fest or anything, but it does get pretty dark at times. Just putting that out there. But it's just a really impressive, immersive vision, and I really liked it. So I look forward to hearing what you think of it.
Good to know. Yeah, I've seen the Wolfman, the new one, and I have not seen Nosferatu, but certainly from the footage, it seems like the two movies are sort of kissing cousins. Like
interesting. What do you mean?
Like there's in terms of the tonal approach, and I was just like, wow, there's something about this time of year that's bringing out these types of movies.
Yeah, I like. Again, we're not big horror fans, but I think that tends to go more toward the gore and the dismemberment kind of horror. But like you and I definitely enjoy a good creepy time if it's really well done, and it's really fun when there's themes buried in there also. And
I think for me what it always comes down to is I'm just squeamish. So, like I was talking to my son yesterday about The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum Fly, and he was, first of all, he only really knows Jeff Goldblum in terms of his modern day quirky, kind of persona, And he's like, what, Jeff Goldblum in a horror movie? I was like, yes, son, that used to be, but I was like, it's a really good movie. Like, I think it's a great movie that I never need to watch again.
Because it's so like gory, right? Or grisly, like, maybe it's a better word.
It's grisly. It's so much. Have you seen it? Have you seen the Cronenberg?
No, I've never seen it.
I mean, it's. I would recommend if you want a great character drama, great performances, effects, the works. However, I don't want to revisit it because it's just too much for me.
See, it's funny what you're saying could exactly apply for me to The Substance. recently
sure.
with Demi Moore, because I really liked it. I mean, it is a singular vision, a really exciting, I don't know, statement from this writer director, and it's very, very specific and excellently accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And performances are amazing. However, it is so gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
So gruesome. And by the end, I stomached it, but I think because the story was worth it.
Sure.
You know, and it's also the person that's experiencing it is inflicting it upon themselves. I think I have a hard time when I see people being stalked and tortured. It really rattles my soul and makes me uncomfortable. But this feels kind of like a fable where you wish the person would stop, but they keep doing it to themselves. And so I can appreciate it on that level.
Right.
But like you said, I don't know that it's something I really want to watch again.
Right.
But yeah. Yeah, we're complicated people, Zachy.
We encompass multitudes. What can I say?
Lastly, I'll bring this up because I don't know that this is ever going to get brought up again, at least in the U.S. But I saw the movie Better Man.
Oh, sure. I was just like, I already got my CG monkey movie this year. That was me when I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is so fascinating, at least to see the conversation in movie circles on like social media and things like that, because I mean, this is basically it's a musical biopic, and it's about the British pop star Robbie Williams.
So does this pass the walk hard test?
Yes, I think it does. Actually, I do. However, this movie is more in danger of falling into those traps, because it really is, you know, from him being a kid, drug problem, relationship he tanks, you know, like it's all the sort of beats that you would expect.
Yeah.
But the big sort of twist, I suppose, is that it's Robbie Williams is not played by a human actor. He's played by a CGI monkey.
Yes.
Right. And so, but that's not the only reason I think it succeeds. I do think it's a really well done, effective story. Like, you get to know this person, you care about them, you get angry at them when they're acting like an a-hole, you root for them to kind of get it back together. And the main discourse I'm seeing online from the US specifically is, I don't know who this person is. You know, apparently the whole world knows who this person is, but I don't. Yeah. And so we're not surprised that it didn't do well. Right. In the same breath, the people who did check it out seem to almost unanimously like it.
Right.
So it was almost like, how in the world do you get people on board in this country? Because it debuted and made, I think, just under $1 million.
Here.
Yeah. And so I don't know what you do. I really don't know how you get.
I think you hit on it, right? Like the fundamental disconnect is this, the you know, the cleverness of the premise is, we're going to tell the story of Robbie effing Williams. but wait for it. He's going to be played by a CGI ape man. And the reaction is, who's Robbie Williams?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And it's like now I know of him from before this movie, but I can't say I'm super familiar with his music and stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. But it has been amusing to see, definitely, like the you know, the online corner, and presumably people who are younger. No idea who he is.
Yeah, no, because he, in the US, I mean, he did have a hit. Yeah. In the, I want to say, middle 90s. So I was aware of who he was.
So 30 years ago.
Yeah, yes. And I also was aware that, you know, he's like a phenomenon outside of the States. So I am kind of curious how it'll do worldwide, you know, box office. But yeah, it's not bad. And, you know, I kid you not, I literally thought this while I was watching it, in the middle of watching it. I feel like, if I was Charlton Heston and I landed on the Planet of the Apes, but things went a little better and I actually integrated into their society, and they're like, hey, we want you to learn about our culture. Actually, do you want to see the story of one of our like favorite musicians? Sure. And then like sitting down, knowing nothing, like there's major moments that I think feel like, oh, this is that famous moment when he was on a talk show and did this.
Wait, so is it all 8 people?
No. Sorry, that's a little confusing. It's just him.
Okay.
But it's like there are these moments where I think most people would be like, oh, that's like when Madonna performed at the MTV VMAs and it was very famous and she was in a wedding dress. You know, like these moments we know, but I don't know any of these moments, and I'm watching this ape do these things, and I'm like, well, he seems like a really talented guy. Like, and that's him. And now I understand your culture a little better. That's great. Okay, well, maybe I'll look him up on Spotify after this. Like
that is hilarious.
I truly, that's what it felt like watching this movie for me.
Okay,
but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's from the director of what's it called? The Greatest. Oh, he's like, because I didn't see it. I can't. The great, what is it called? It was like Hugh Jackman, Greatest Showman.
Greatest Showman, yeah.
Which was a huge hit. And I mean, this guy is obviously a very talented director, especially with music, but, and he did a great job. I think everybody did a great job in it. But I think this is one of those things people, I was going to say may discover down the line, but I don't know that they will. This could go into obscurity over here. But for anyone who's interested, I did think it was pretty good.
Okay, well, there you go. I actually think that is going to mean the difference between people checking it out and not checking it out for, among our listeners. For some reason, your opinion carries weight, Brian. So carry that with pride.
Well, I do appreciate that. And I would be curious to hear of other people's perspectives because, again, for people, I'm sure we know we have people who are listening around the globe in Australia and the UK and everything. And so it would be interesting to hear their perspective on this movie, being very familiar with him.
Only from a dollars and cents perspective, I'm absolutely befuddled by the idea that they would spend $110 million on this movie.
I don't know. I mean, truly, I don't know thinking globally, I don't know what the projections are when they set out to do this. But I was also going to say, I would be curious for people who don't know who he is if they check it out. I'm not saying go out of your way. I'm just saying if you have even a passing interest, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't have an interest, I don't know what you may or may not get out of it. It's like, it's a weird one to sort of put out there. I don't quite know how to recommend it, but I'm just saying if you do check it out, I do think they did a good job. And the ape thing is interesting. I think it's well done. And especially when he's a little boy, when he gets his feelings hurt, could feel a little lump in my throat. I mean, it's very well executed.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a cheap gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So it's a weird one, but wanted to mention it.
Yeah.
But how about you?
Oh, well, I saw Den of Thieves 2. Which just opened at number 1 this past week. I was somebody who knew of the first. Have you heard of Den of Thieves? By the way, I should as a preamble.
It's so funny. Yes, I haven't seen it, but I do remember it. It's one of those Gerard Butler like action films, which it feels like he's making these pretty good B action movies.
Yeah, Gerard Butler is a fascinating case study of a guy who has created a persona that works within its lane and pretty much occupies a lane all to itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very successful at being what it is.
Yeah.
And so I respect that.
Absolutely. And I've seen a handful of them and enjoyed them.
Yeah, I think they can be hit or miss.
Yeah.
But I will say, dude does show up, and I do find his sort of mushmouth American accent as funneled through a space alien trying to speak American via a Scottish accent. You know what I mean?
Sure. Wait, can we get a little of that? What you're talking about?
I'm not even going to attempt it.
Okay.
It's a case study in and of itself, but I find that sort of endearing, because he's found a niche. And like I said, the Has Fallen movies, I'm not crazy about those, but what was that? Law-abiding citizen. Yeah, not Geostorm. Let's put that on the lower end. Well, but he was in Greenland, which was pretty good. Plane. That was
Which
good.
I know I would enjoy that. I kind of keep forgetting about it, but
That was good.
When the night is right, I know that's going to, scratch an itch.
Yeah. So he did a movie called Den of Thieves. This was like 2018.
Okay.
And I happened to catch it on streaming at some point during that span, and I was like, oh, this is like totally. It was low risk, low reward.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it, and I had no inclination of them doing a sequel. So the premise of the first one is this is the thing. It's a caper movie that sort of has designs on being Heat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I would say sort of the reach exceeded his grasp a little bit. But that notwithstanding, I thought Gerard Butler was good in the lead, and the supporting cast members are very good. O'Shea Jackson Jr. This is like kind of the first time I really saw him acting, like not playing his dad.
Sure, right.
Anyway, they were both good. Didn't demand a sequel, but a sequel was made, and so I was assigned to review that for IGN, and I reached out to the press contact, and I was like, "Hey, when's the press screening?" Like, "Oh, we're not screening it for press."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, it's concerning,
Yeah.
So I went and watched it opening night, and you know what? It's totally fine. This is the textbook definition of a lateral move. It's neither better nor worse. It's in the it's in that exact same lane.
All right. I mean, sometimes I'm in the mood for that. It makes me think of the Liam Neeson movies.
It's comparable, I would say. Yeah, of that type of like I miss there being a market for that type of stuff, and clearly Gerard Butler has found that market and sort of cornered it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think both movies are longer than they need to be, because both of them land at about 220-ish.
Mm-hmm. Why?
And I'm like, no, these are 118-minute movies.
Totally. Yeah.
But that notwithstanding, I think that the original sets up a good sort of cat and mouse thing. The second one continues that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for just something, again, look, you and I, earlier this year we were hanging out and we put on Sudden Death,
mm-hmm.
the Van Damme movie, and sometimes you want something like that.
It's funny. I started making a list of my favorite movies. I do this at the end of every year, my favorite movies of the year.
Yeah.
And I only include the ones that came out in 2024, but I put down that I think my favorite movie viewing experience of the entire year was watching Sudden Death with you.
Wow. That's really nice.
Yeah. We laughed so much. We were like having so much fun. And I mean, I wouldn't even say we were laughing at the movie. We were sort of laughing with the movie. Like it's just doing what it set out to do perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think in a similar vein, I think these Den of Thieves movies work on that level. I mean, don't go in expecting heat, but sometimes you don't want heat,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just want kind of like a heist caper thing.
Yeah.
And you want to hear, Gerard Butler drunkenly slur his way through an American accent and sort of pat him on the back for the effort he put in. Yeah. Here's another thing I watched, actually. Interstellar. In the theater.
Right. We are kind of catching up for several weeks here.
I know it feels like we've been in hibernation. Yeah. So this thing got re-released in theaters, and honestly, the coolest thing for me was how excited people were to watch this movie in theaters.
Yeah.
Right? We've got the big old 75 millimeter IMAX downtown at the Metreon where you and I where we watched Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And joint was sold out. There was no seats available for the duration of this movie being re-released.
Right. The demand. It was like that down here too. It was all sold out.
Crazy, right? So yeah. I watched it. We got a Fomax right near where you and I, where we watched The Flash the same days we watched.
Yeah. I forgot we moved theaters. Yeah,
we just shifted.
Yeah.
So I watched it, and again, the place was packed, right, and which was really gratifying because it's not like this movie flopped when it came out. It did well, but it has been really taken in by the generation since then.
I've seen that firsthand. People telling me that who are
It really and what I see so much of is I liked it when it came out. I love it now.
Same,
Right?
same. It's so funny. Yeah, like you said, it was well received. We all kind of liked it, but I think we were still probably like, oh yeah, but The Dark Knight, or maybe even like Inception or something. It's a little flashier, but this is the one that's just sort of surprisingly risen in estimation, I think, and become a lot of people's favorite Nolan films. And for the younger generation, it just hands down is their favorite.
Yeah.
One of their favorite films, period. It's been kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, I took all my older boys to see it, and that was really fun. Like my 11-year-old, for him it was kind of the first time seeing something really heady like this, and hearing him talk about it afterwards. I was like, all right, it's good. I was like McConaughey. I was like, all right. You know what's funny though is I thought this was really interesting. We're watching the movie, and it's going through it, and there's the sequence on the water planet, and they end up losing time, etc. And then they get back to the spaceship.
Yes,
and you have the scene where Matthew McConaughey is watching the videos of his kids, and you have that great he's crying as he's seeing that they're getting older. You know what I'm talking about? Really cathartic moment. So that scene ends. And then people started getting up to use the restroom and stuff.
Right.
It's like everybody I thought that was so interesting. There's this collective understanding. We have to make sure we see this scene.
Yep.
Isn't that interesting?
Yep. You give it your full attention.
Yeah.
Almost like there's being respectful of it and not even disrupting the
and like
theater.
I don't want to miss that.
Yep.
I just thought that was really like noticeably nobody got up.
Wow.
And then after that, people gradually, in and out, whatever. But
it's powerful. It's still powerful.
I think it's a very special movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't catch it in the IMAX re-release,
but you saw it earlier last year, right?
Yeah. Earlier this year, at least at my Regal, I don't know if they were doing it everywhere, but they were showing all the Christopher Nolan movies every Wednesday. And so it became an event every single week. A group of us, we would just go and watch The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, Inception, Interstellar. And it was wonderful. It was seriously some of my favorite movie-going times at the theater this past year. And you'd see some of the same people every week. I remember saying to one guy I didn't even know, see you next week. And seeing Interstellar on the big screen, not even IMAX, is just, it's a heck of a movie. It's a heck of a movie.
Yeah. I've been meaning to ask you, by the way, because you and I were both watching Yellowstone, dipping in and out of Yellowstone. So the series ended.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just laughing because I love your Beth impersonation. I think about it a lot.
Oh, from the first season when she's toying with the Danny Houston character?
Yeah.
You know what's funny about Beth Dutton on the show, played by Kelly Riley. We've talked about this before. She is either a love her or hate her character. And so what's always amusing to me is somebody who watches the show for the first time. They're like, oh, I started watching Yellowstone. God, I hate Beth so much.
right.
Or polar opposite. Man, isn't that Beth? Man, what a pistol.
Yes. Yes.
But the series finale aired, and I've been wanting to talk to you about it because we touched base about the episodes leading into the finale last time. So what do you think about how they wrapped that sucker up?
Well, I came to Yellowstone late, and I think the early seasons were really strong, and it's a Western soap opera. I mean, let's acknowledge what it is. But I thought it was very compelling, and I thought it had great characters, and I really enjoyed all the drama and the delicious drama, sort of the juicy aspects of it. And then it started, I would say, maybe around season 3, to like many soap operas that have to keep telling their story, repeat itself a little bit, and also get a little sillier in some of the things that would happen. But again, I still enjoyed the flavor and I kept coming back for it. I would say by the end, I feel like maybe it had spun out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I mean, this is not even a spoiler. It just real world people know that Kevin Costner didn't come back, and I think he definitely left a void. And the last, I want to say it was 6 episodes of this.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, this past season without Kevin Costner really felt like it could have just been a movie. Like it felt like a 2-hour story stretched out to 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with where it landed. But yeah, it started to feel like it was kind of out of gas and sputtering a bit. But as a whole, I did enjoy the series itself. So I don't know. What about you?
I really liked the finale.
Same. That's what I mean. Like I'm fine with where it landed.
That's kind of so that's like, to me, the landing allows me to squint past the turbulence on the way to the landing, so to speak. Because I honestly feel like the way they wrapped everything up with a little bow around it, to quote Brian Hall, chef's kiss.
Yeah, I are you talking about the narration?
That and just the plot mechanics leading into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a powerful statement there without spoiling anything. I mean, so it really rewards having watched 1883.
Yes.
I would offer it makes it essential to have watched 1883.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I think that's what you kind of realize is from 1883, and then presumably, the both seasons of 1923 once those are all done, and then taking that together with Yellowstone, where that show ended. I'm like, you got a very good multi-generational story or a saga right here.
Yeah, and now I realize what you were specifically talking about. And yeah, I like where all the pieces ended up.
Yes.
I think it felt right and satisfying.
I think that here's what I appreciated, and I'm going to try to talk around spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
The character of John Dutton, who Kevin Costner played, from the beginning of the show, he made me uncomfortable. Because he's a complicated person, but I was always like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about this guy, because I'm not sure I like him.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that to some extent the show's thesis is, yeah, you're probably right not to.
Right. Sure.
He's a complicated person, but in some ways he is like Tony Soprano. Like, remember we had that conversation about the Sopranos. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about Tony Soprano.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like it's, let's not herald his actions, because they're not necessarily admirable.
And sometimes it takes you a minute to catch up with that, because you're looking at Kevin Costner, who's like, it's Kevin Costner. He's, he's Mr. Baseball. He's Mr. America, Mm-hmm. And there's also something about like cowboy justice, where movies try to make it seem like, maybe it's a little bit outside the lines of the law, but it's, right is rewarded and wrong is punished. And that's cowboy justice. And you get the sense that the show is showing you a little bit of cowboy justice, but then you're like, well, no, actually that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad. That's not justice. And so, it takes you a minute to catch up to what I think you're saying, which is, oh no, I don't think we are supposed to think he is right.
Yeah. Like there's a moment near the end where you're seeing something that signals, okay, this is ending now.
Mm-hmm.
Where things are taken down,
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself like getting emotional watching that, and to me, I try to plug into that. I'm like, my reaction unprompted, well, that says something about how I'm feeling about this,
Totally.
Yeah, like I'm looking forward to revisiting it in toto now, because Amina hasn't seen all of it. So
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not. I literally because I was kind of keeping up with it, and then I watched the finale, and I'm just like, you watched it without me? I was like, I watched it without you because I want to know if it ends well, so that it's worth committing. And I think it does end well. That's my point.
Yeah, and I have to say, I am really glad that 1923 is coming back because, for all the ups and downs of all of it, I enjoy this universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I am glad that I get to spend more time in it.
And it is continuing on in some way, shape, or form because they're doing like the Beth and Rip spinoff or whatever.
Very curious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they should do like it should be a multi-camera sitcom. You know how like you got like Young Sheldon,
Yes.
which is a single camera, and then you got Big Bang. They should do that. Like, not at all what people are expecting. Rip walks in, I'm home. Woo! It's just set. It's like 3 rooms. It's like the sitting room, the bedroom. The stable that's an obvious set.
Right.
That's Taylor Sheridan. I'm not telling you how to do your job, but if you want to zig when people expect you to zag,
I'm on board. I would love to see that.
All right. Hey, Brian, we got some listener letters here.
Oh, let's hear it.
People have been writing to us, which I'm always grateful for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dipping into various commentaries from the past, including this one. This is a note we got on our Patreon, by the way, from Adam O, who listened to our Sixth Sense commentary.
Okay.
And he says, after listening to your commentary and watching the movie with my 12-year-old, I found one of the young adult books on eBay and got it for him for Christmas.
That's right. I mean, do you want to explain what that was? Because I didn't even know those existed.
Yeah, so this was like while we were watching The Sixth Sense, I was talking about how, M. Night Shyamalan had mentioned wanting to do like stories about like the further adventures of Cole.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed that was just some passing fancy that he had. I didn't realize that was actually a thing that ended up happening. And there was several YA books about exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Cole has to uncover the mystery of the ghost on the airplane or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is like the type of stuff that you and I back in the day, we would have, in those scholastic book order forms would have,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right?
I look forward to at school ordering those books. Yeah.
It's connected to that thing that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And so Adam says this kid, his own kid, who is like pulling teeth to get him to read, is loving it. I never would have known those existed if not for you guys.
Hey, nice job.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring back reading one child at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it. But put down that all that tic tac and the whim wham and the flea flam and whatever else is on your phone.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing? I mean, those are over 20 years old.
25-year-old books.
Yeah, they're still effective.
Hey, that says something.
Yeah.
Here's a note we got from Alex Naom, who says, Seasons, holiday, and a Merry New Year to you both. I'm ringing in the new year by watching Looper, which off the top of my head is the last truly great Bruce Willis performance. I've not seen Glass, however. Hearing you talk about it as being pretty meh, I can imagine Willis in that is better than Looper. I can't imagine, that Willis in that is better than... Yeah, I would agree with that probably.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, I think what we know now is while he was making Glass, he was already kind of deteriorating, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I can't really say I remember too much about the performance. I just remember not loving the direction the movie took.
Yeah, that's where it lost me as well. Yeah. I think Willis is fine in that movie, but to Alex's point, he is tremendous in Looper. So I would agree that is probably the last great Bruce Willis performance.
Right.
He says, all that aside, I was thinking about Bruce Willis's standing in the all-time rankings of action stars. The conclusions I came to are, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, Brian. He says, Arnold Schwarzenegger, is like Superman, godlike and all-powerful, and we respect him for that. And he has been in some of the greatest movies/stories in the genre, but there is an otherworldly quality to him that sometimes separates him from us.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is like Batman. The coolest of the action stars, I think, has been in a lot of great films and a wider variety of styles/genres than Arnie/Soups. Alex has put some thought into this, I have to say.
Yeah.
But he is the hero that the audience above all other wants to be and can relate to. Sylvester Stallone is probably like the DC/WB executives. When he puts his heart and soul into something and do his own thing, they just truly nail it and have done that a lot. But when he tries to mimic other people in his genre, his strike rate is below par.
This is very good.
Very well thought out.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So, because Stallone is the guy with the, hey, maybe I can do comedy, and he does, Oscar and don't
Stop
tell
or my mom will shoot.
Stop. I was gonna say don't tell mom, but that's a different.
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Stop or my mom will shoot, which is of course legendarily awful. Yeah. Well, he says, what do you think of this? Not at all random, highly topical and relevant discussion.
I think that's so true. And I mean, yeah, Bruce Willis plays the everyman, and he does things a little more heightened than the everyman could probably typically do, but it all feels grounded enough. And like he was saying, something where it's like, oh, well, I feel like I can relate to that. That's maybe something I could step in and try to see how I would do and save everybody in a building, that kind of thing. Right.
Funny. That's really funny.
Yeah. Whereas, you see Schwarzenegger holding a guy by his legs over Mulholland Drive, Commando or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm never going to be that guy, but he's fun to watch.
Well, you got to have goals, Brian.
Right.
You have to aspire to one day hold a guy by his legs over Mulholland. Otherwise, what are we even doing? By the way, did you see that? Not to get political, but this is relevant. Donald Trump has appointed Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, and Jon Voight as his envoys to Hollywood.
I did. I saw the headline. I haven't read it. I don't even know what that means.
I don't think he knows what it means. He's like, they're going to be my eyes and ears in Hollywood. And I'm like, well, I don't know that Jon Voight is like, I don't know that people are knocking down doors to cast him in anything.
Yeah. I don't know what that means or if it's just sort of an attempt. It's weird how much politicians want to align themselves with celebrities. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's just an attempt to have some sort of celebrity associated with them. I don't know.
Yeah, I read on that, and there's a dearth of any kind of details because it's just another whatever in this fusillade of stuff, right? But I am definitely like just from a goal oriented perspective. You say, well, what do you plan to accomplish with Mel Gibson? 2025 Mel Gibson. What's going to happen there?
I know. And as someone who freaking loves Lethal Weapon, mm-hmm. I have a very complicated relationship with Mel Gibson. It's still as a lover of his older films. So it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird,
Yeah.
I mean, Stallone, to his credit, has continued working, and he's got that speaking of Taylor Sheridan, he's got that show and whatever. But again, this whole like they're gonna go into Hollywood, they're gonna parachute into Hollywood, mm-hmm. and it's a troubled place, and they're gonna clean it up. And I'm like, well, A, what do you mean by troubled? And B, what do you intend them to do? I have so many questions.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. This will be interesting.
That it will, yeah. We're gonna, as we'll stick pin in time. We are recording this just literally 3 days away from the presidential inauguration.
Wow, yeah, you're right.
So that is bananas. We're gonna be having some interesting conversations.
Yeah,
I suspect. Hey, we got some headlines.
All right, yeah.
So, first of all, right up top, a couple people have passed away literally just in the past couple days.
Yeah.
And well, first up, I wanted to mention Bob Uecker.
Yes.
Who obviously well known as a legendary baseball broadcaster. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Truly one of the most distinctive voices you could have, doing play-by-play. Mm-hmm. But certainly for me, and I suspect maybe for you, he will always be George from Mr. Belvedere.
Oh, 100%. I think I could say Major League because, Major League and Mr. Belvedere, those were my introductions to Bob Uecker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was just like a sort of like Harry Carey for us in Chicago. I mean, he was just one of those larger than life personalities who transcended being a local personality. Right. I mean, the country knew who he was. He was in commercials. Well, I certainly it helped him being in those shows and things like that. But he was just, I don't know, just such a fun, boisterous personality.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Belvedere is one of those. Like whenever I have an opportunity, I'll pull up an episode and watch it on YouTube because for whatever reason that show is not available anywhere. I don't know, man. It's still a good show.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an 80s sort of style premise, sort of like guy on the couch with a beer sort of dad meets stuffy British butler. Will they ever get along?
Which apparently, it's a whole series of books and stuff, like well before that sitcom.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should see if any listeners' kids want to read those books and tell us if they're any good and hopefully reignite their love of reading.
I remember back in high school. This is a tangent. My friend Mike Giron. He had his Mr. Belvedere impression, and his Mr. Belvedere impression was just this: Wesley. That's it.
When you mentioned Mr. Belvedere, I was thinking like Wesley. I don't know why that is. That's so
I'd be
funny.
like, "Hey, Mike, do your Mr. Belvedere, Wesley."
Oh man.
But yes, Bob Uecker gone at age 90.
Wow. Well, what a life, though. I mean, he was a player also. He kind of a so-so player, but a huge outsized personality that everybody just loved.
Yeah,
And then-
exactly.
Yeah,
a very big presence.
Yeah, what a journey that guy had.
Also, just passed away in the last couple of days is Jenno Swark.
That's right. Yeah, you just sent me that.
Yeah, so Jenno Swark, who we, you and I, we just talked through Jaws 2 in 2023. And he, of course, director of television and movies, very, very long career. And I think what we said after watching Jaws 2 is, well, this is the best Jaws sequel you were going to get without Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that film certainly illustrates like a lot of just very skilled filmmaker, not flashy necessarily, but he knows the assignment and he's able to do it,
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that was a theme for us in the past couple of years. I think of Psycho 2, where
That's right,
for the longest time that just felt like silly to me, just the fact that existed. But then I actually watched it and was like, oh, well, it's not bad. It's not Psycho, of course. I mean, that's why Psycho is still Psycho. But
that's right.
Well, it's not a bad sequel.
And I think I said this to you before. I remember watching a little documentary on YouTube about the making of Psycho 2. And when it was announced, you had various filmmakers who were like, why would you make a sequel to Psycho? Among them, Jenno Swark. He of Jaws 2, and
funny.
I just found that amusing because that tells you that at that time,
yes,
the notion of making a Jaws sequel without Steven Spielberg was not, sacrilegious or what you'd think of now,
That's a good point. Yeah.
But Swark also directed the movie Somewhere in Time, starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, and that's a movie that has retained a cult following all the way up until today.
Yeah, I need to check that out. I know you've mentioned that.
It's not. I don't love it, just being honest.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's poorly directed. I think it's well directed. The story didn't do it for me.
Oh, I see. Well, it was written by Nicholas Meyer, right?
No, you're thinking of.
Oh, yes.
You're
confusing.
thinking of the
the Jack the Ripper.
Yes, Time After Time.
Time After Time. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get your time travel. God, Brian, I'm sick of carrying you.
I know. I'm definitely being very disappointing as a Zaki friend.
Time After Time, I think you saw.
I did, yes.
Yeah, that one you saw. But here's a comment that Jane Seymour left on her Facebook with regards to Jenno Swark. She says, today we say goodbye to a true visionary. Jenno Swark was not just a brilliant director, but a kind and generous soul. He gifted us many timeless stories, including Somewhere in Time, a film that changed my life forever. May his memory be a blessing and may his artistry live on in our hearts.
Nice.
So Jenno Swark gone at 85.
Wow.
And then, unfortunately, it never rains, but it pours.
Yeah.
We got word yesterday that David Lynch had passed away at age 78.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it's shocking because it's just shocking to see that headline with his image. And sadly, I mean, we learned recently that he was suffering from emphysema.
That's right.
And that he wasn't even able to leave his house anymore.
Right.
So it sounds like he wasn't in good shape. And so, it's one of those things where you sort of, it's so iconic picturing him with that shock of hair and the cigarette between his fingers. But
and
you're
that
also
voice.
Well, the voice, of course. But I was just like, then you also think, damn those cigarettes. You know what I mean?
Man, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thought that I had, but with the Lynch news and Zwark, I mean, these are people whose names I've been familiar with throughout my life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, it sort of hits you like, that generation is leaving.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely. And you sort of grapple with, not to get morbid, but I mean, the passage of time is immutable. And, these are sort of these reminders that are more bracing than you'd like,
Yep. Yeah. We always talk about that. It's no longer the people of our parents' generation who we know their names. It's now people we have kind of relationships with. And it's weird to see those people pass. Something else oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, just to really underscore the impact of David Lynch. I mean, like or dislike his films, he brought a singular vision to anything with his name on it. And that's, he represented an artistry that we really don't see much of anymore.
Yep.
And he made a very healthy career out of, just making the things he wanted to make. He didn't have to bow to anybody's bottom line.
I don't feel like anything he ever put out ever felt compromised. I would. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's funny. He was one of a kind, but I was thinking about it, and he got to come up in a time when an artist like him could have such a wide platform. I mean, it's not to say, we have so many outlets now, even TikToks and the things like that, where for people to do different types of things and find their followings. But for him to be able to have, a movie like Blue Velvet in theaters nationwide, Mulholland Drive and all these sorts of things, and just continue to have a platform for him to be able to make Twin Peaks: The Return, possibly one of the most esoteric TV shows ever made, that had 18 episodes and aired on Showtime and probably had millions of dollars for a budget. I mean, that will never happen again.
Right.
And my relationship with him is interesting. Like there's certain films I haven't seen, and there's some that are really difficult for me to stomach. And there are others that I just absolutely adore, but what you can say about all of it is for him making the sort of nightmarish and haunting kind of things that typically might sort of put me off, he does them in such a unique way that I'm continually drawn into them, which I think is just really interesting and speaks to something about whatever, muse he had.
Yeah.
It's just,
you and I, we talked through his Dune this past year.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the movie that he wanted the least to do with, right? All the way, he never didn't want to talk about it. And, if a movie, if anything in his catalog was compromised, it was that, right?
Yes.
Right. And yet, this is the point I make. I'm sure I said this in our commentary. I'm like, I don't think it's a good movie, but I do think it's a fascinating movie.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. And it's a movie that I have owned on VHS, on DVD, twice on DVD, Blu-ray, and I own 2 different 4K releases right now.
Wait, what are the differences? I'm curious.
One was like a special edition, cleaned up version of the theatrical, and a couple months ago they put out the longer Alan Smithy cut.
Oh, okay.
Which admittedly he wanted his name taken off of, so maybe he would not consider that
Sure.
But my point is this, right? Like it was something that bore his imprint for good or for ill, and regardless of how that movie turned out, it spawned a career that was going well until his death, right? I mean, it's not like he retired. He just kind of ran out of runway, unfortunately, and that's remarkable.
Yeah. I'm glad he was able to make Twin Peaks: The Return, because it feels like he got to do one last.
He got to put a pin in that.
Uncompromising statement,
Mm-hmm.
in his voice. And yeah, and I mean, just for people who are interested, who haven't seen his stuff, I mean, that's the thing. And what I'm trying to say, my complicated relationship with his films, is because Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, the movie in the Twin Peaks universe, is deeply upsetting. It's a really upsetting watch.
Upsetting because of the subject matter.
And some of the things that happen in it. But it feels like something that I should want to push away, and yet I just am captivated by it. And I just think that's that really says something about what it is he's doing. Like, he's actually saying something through these upsetting things. They're not just like upsetting for the sake of being upsetting. You know what I mean? And I just find that really interesting. He made things that felt like dreams somehow captured by a camera, and some of them are darker than others. And if people are looking for something, I would think the most accessible, even though some people would say it is inaccessible, would be Mulholland Drive.
Okay.
I think that's definitely, if people want to see like a David Lynch movie that has some, dark moments in it, but feels like this is what he did, and this is what he did unlike anybody else. And I think it is confusing and dreamlike, but it is also gettable.
Okay.
If you really, dig in.
Yeah.
I rewatched it maybe about a month and a half ago, and I was just like, man, I love this movie.
Well, I wanted to share the post that Kyle MacLachlan put on his Instagram, and Kyle MacLachlan, who if anybody is intertwined with Lynch in a way, he's almost his on-screen persona, his avatar. I mean, it's remarkable how he showed up in so many of his works throughout his career. And the other thing, he just seems like a very joyful person. Right. I think earlier or last month, you sent me a video of his sort of marking the 40th anniversary of Dune.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, it's nice that he's able to be at this stage of his career, right? Where Dune was not a success, but it's one project among many, as opposed to the thing that killed his career in the cradle.
Right.
And so he talked about that after Lynch passed. So this is like I said, this is a post on Instagram. He says, 42 years ago, for reasons beyond my comprehension, David Lynch plucked me out of obscurity to star in his first and last big budget movie. He clearly saw something in me that even I didn't recognize. I owe my entire career and life, really, to his vision. What I saw in him was an enigmatic and intuitive man with a creative ocean bursting forth inside of him. He was in touch with something the rest of us wish we could get to. Our friendship blossomed on Blue Velvet and then Twin Peaks, and I always found him to be the most authentically alive person I'd ever met. David was in tune with the universe and his own imagination on a level that seemed to be the best version of human. He was not interested in answers because he understood that the questions are the drive that make us who we are. They are our breath. While the world has lost a remarkable artist, I've lost a dear friend who imagined a future for me and allowed me to travel in worlds I could never have conceived on my own. I can see him now standing up to greet me in his backyard with a warm smile and a big hug and that Great Plains honk of a voice. We'd talk coffee, the joy of the unexpected, the beauty of the world, and laugh. His love for me and mine for him came out of the cosmic fate of two people who saw the best things about themselves in each other. I will miss him more than the limits of my language can tell and my heart can bear. My world is that much fuller because I knew him, and that much emptier now that he's gone. David, I remain forever changed and forever your Kale. Thank you for everything.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I read that and I was like, I hope I can make an impact enough on somebody's life to have them remember me like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you are remembered like this, you have won.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. and taking it even further, I mean, sometimes I'll be at like a funeral or something and people will say things like that. And I always think, man, I wish they could have heard this,
Hmm.
and maybe you hope that we let the people in our lives know. I mean, maybe we won't write it out quite like that, or, because it tends to make people uncomfortable sometimes in the moment. But hopefully we do let the people that we treasure in our lives know that they are treasured.
Yeah. I always found him to be the most authentically alive person I'd ever met. I mean,
Yeah.
one can only hope to be described like that,
You know what that reminds me of also with him is he was just a consummate artist. Like he was always, I heard he would work with making furniture and he would do this and that and he was a painter. And something else I remember when I first moved out here, there was an indie rock station, 103.1, which I freaking miss so much. I learned about so many awesome bands through that station. But anyway, David Lynch would do a daily weather report for that station. Yeah, he would just be like blue skies in Los Angeles today.
It's foggy out.
Yeah, just like clear from the east all the way stretching to the west. And you're like, God bless this guy. Like he doesn't have to do this, but he wants to, and it just I don't know. It just seemed very, very him.
I love what Steven Spielberg said following his passing, because of course he was in The Fabelmans, in that final scene with John Ford as David Lynch as John Ford.
Yep.
And he says, I got to know David when he played John Ford in The Fabelmans. Here was one of my heroes, David Lynch, playing one of my heroes. It was surreal and seemed like a scene out of one of David's own movies. Which, like, that was kind of like the last thing he did, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a bad thing to tip your hat on before you leave the room.
Yeah. And it's a perfect, almost little short film contained within that movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
David Lynch, he will be missed.
Yep.
I mean, truly, and this is cliche, I don't think we're going to see his kind ever again.
I really don't. I really don't think so. Yeah.
A singular personality.
Yep.
Here's some other news, which, you say, Brian, we should tell the ones we care about how much they matter to us. Well, The Simpsons matters to me, Brian.
Yeah, and me too.
I feel like we may be slowly witnessing the end the end of the journey for The Simpsons, and I don't know how. I'm trying to grapple with that.
Okay, yeah. So what you're talking about is apparently The Simpsons, which has been on Sunday night for how long? I mean,
since 93, I think.
Holy cow. 1993. It's been a staple of Sunday nights on Fox television here in the US, and it is now apparently getting moved to Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Which feels, I sent you a thing. It reminded me of that unsettling moment when Marge looks out the window and sees Bart flying a kite, and she says, "There's just something so unwholesome about flying a kite at night." It's like a weird, unsettling feeling that she has, and that's exactly how I felt thinking about The Simpsons moving to Wednesday night. Since 1993, that feels very weird to me.
Yeah. So, and this is by way of pajiba.com. It says the famed Yellow family will be shifting time slots after 30 plus years on Sunday nights. Fox will continue showing other animated shows on Sundays, but The Simpsons will no longer be included in that block.
Well, I think you and I have this unsettling feeling because typically when that happens, when a show gets moved out of its successful slot, that means we're possibly seeing the beginning of the end for that show. Which,
look, to me, if that is indeed where this is headed, I'm not terribly surprised in that Fox, the network, no longer has any financial skin in the game as far as keeping that show on, right?
I mean, that thing will generate money unlike any other show ever.
Yeah.
Forever, because they have so much of it to syndicate and to license to Disney Plus and those, whatever.
Yeah. So before the Disney purchase, I always said this. People are like, oh, is nobody watching it? Or is anybody still watching that show anymore? Like, oh, it's Saturday Night Dead, that kind of thing, And I'm like, well, clearly somebody's watching it because TV is not a charity.
Yeah, right,
right?
right.
But I'm like, but also there's the fact that, I mean, it's a merchandising juggernaut for Fox.
Mm-hmm.
So it incentivizes them to keep it on. Well, now the only money they're making off it is from the ad space.
Yep.
And so this to me is a recognition that, well, the audience has shifted in some way.
And also I don't have the statement in front of me, but someone at Fox said just viewing habits have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really matter what night a show airs live because fewer and fewer people are actually tuning in that moment. They're watching it the next day on Hulu or from their DVR or whatever. Yeah. And that is true. That is true. And there aren't many shows I do watch in the moment. So,
well, and one thing, and this is like an ongoing conversation on this show about like, is the Simpsons good anymore, et cetera. I mean, again, people who've been with us for this journey are like, oh, you guys doing this again, right? But and yes, we are.
Yeah.
Deal with it. No, but what has been illuminating for me is viewing the Simpsons through the eyes of my children. Because we, like you and I, people of our vintage, we're kind of like, well, that golden era, whatever, seasons 2 to 12, let's say, and pretty much stay in there, right? But the other day, I'm sitting there with my daughter, she's 7 going on 8, and she's like, oh, put on Simpsons. And I was putting on like a season 8 episode. She's like, no, put on like season 20 and up. And I'm like, why? She goes, oh, I don't like the blurry ones. and well, that girl doesn't live with me anymore. Right. She's with a new family who will tolerate that kind of shit. No, but I found that, illustrative of just sort of how kids perceive this thing, right?
Yeah.
And that, admittedly, that example is somewhat superficial, but also just in terms of the style of humor, what you realize is like the show now, the humor has shifted a little into something that's more reflective of the style of comedy with kids shows and things like that we see these days. Right? So in other words, you have a situation where The Simpsons inspired a whole generation of comedy, which in turn did its own thing. And then we're like maybe 2 generations removed from that, and The Simpsons is the based not like being reactive or whatever, but it's being created by people who are from this latter generation.
Yeah.
And so that's the sensibility that they have. You know what I mean?
And that's what's been so difficult. And I think only with hindsight do I now understand this and accept it. I mean, you could probably track our personal journey with how much The Simpsons has changed over the years where, I was really, snobby, I guess, about it, or I would just be like, they're not good anymore. They suck. The Simpsons are dead. And then I came to a little bit of a realization. Well, the Simpsons that I loved were created by a set of people. And those set of people are not there anymore. It's a new set of people. So just because The Simpsons look the same, the people creating it are different, And so that's something I'm like, well, I don't have to like it. But I would say I've evolved even further than that, exactly to what you've just said, which is, well, yes, no, you don't have to like it, but you also have to think about, the journeys of the people who are making it now, and the fact that they are influenced by shows that were influenced by The Simpsons, and now it's kind of boomerang back to, well, now they're voicing The Simpsons in a way.
That's right.
So it's a weird thing that I don't think hardly any other show has or will ever experience, being on so long and being animated where it does still resemble the thing that we know and love. So it's, I think, more jarring that it looks like what we know, but it doesn't sound like what we know.
Yeah, literally, and
Oh, well, yes, literally. The voices, I mean, the actors sound so much older now, which of course they would. But it's weird because, yes, to our eyes, it still looks the same.
Yeah, again, I see it with my kids when they watch, and I realize, because they'll watch the older ones, they'll watch the new, they're just, it's all just Simpsons to them. Yeah. And what I was, the kind of the light bulb that went off over my head is, it's like when we were kids and we would watch Bugs Bunny cartoons. And sometimes you had the Chuck Jones ones. and sometimes you had kind of the earlier ones, and you were just like, oh, well, this is one of these, this is one, but it's all Bugs Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good example. That's true.
You know?
And I didn't. That's to your point about your daughter. I mean, when I was 8 or something, looking at those, I could tell the difference, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
I just accepted it all as a whole in a way.
Yeah. So it kind of it does feel like the that show may be moving towards some kind of a wrap up, which again that's when you're gonna get all the testimonials and all the
yes,
I loved it all along, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But to me, that's definitely going to be one of those moments where, of course, it's going to happen because every show ends.
Yep.
But that's going to be one of those. Wow. Okay. Suddenly, I need to take stock of the last 3.5 decades or whatever.
I know. I mean, we've said it. Well, speaking for myself, I haven't watched it in many, many years.
Not regularly, but you do dip in every once in a while.
I've seen sometimes when something will get talked about,
right?
Like the season premiere recently.
Oh, sure.
Was
the final episode.
Yeah, it was supposed to play out like it was the final episode of the series, right. And so I wanted to.
And it was clever. I have to say that episode was pretty funny.
Oh, I agree. Well, what I was going to say was, I don't think about it much anymore, or at least the fact that it's still airing new episodes,
the current ones.
However, when it's gone, it's going to feel weird.
Yep.
I'm not going to like it.
I'm not going to like it. Yeah.
So, but I have been watching old ones again recently, sort of as comfort food. And oh man, they just can still crack me up. And I'm not going to say one's better than the other. I'm happy that people like your daughter will have favorite episodes in season 20 and 30 or whatever that I probably won't. But it's about finding the cadence.
That's right.
That you appreciate. And I think the cadence of, I'll even go to season 1. I know not a lot of people do, but season 1 through about 10, 12, super formative to me and continues to crack me up and impress me and make me angry sometimes at how good it is. And I'm glad that there's a cadence for other generations too. Yeah. So it can all make people happy.
Life goes on. I guess that's the takeaway.
Yeah.
There was an episode, I don't know if you saw it, this past season, where it's about like how I forget the guy's name, but like one of the random barflies who's in like every episode.
Yes, right.
He died.
Yes.
And like Homer and Carl and Lenny were his only friends.
Right.
And I was like, it was an effective episode, but more like it was an effective breaking of the format.
Mm-hmm.
And
what do you mean?
I'm like, well,
in breaking the format.
Well, it's like the show has been around for so long now that the episodes that we talk about are the ones that are like that. Like here's this character who's never had a line,
Right.
But we can do a whole episode about him because we're familiar with him because we've seen him over so many,
Right.
Or the prestige cable show episode.
Yes, I forgot about that one. Yeah,
like it's clear that when they're challenging themselves, that's when they're having the most fun because they've really plumbed just about every story they can from just Springfield as an entity.
Right. I can't even imagine going in as a writer now.
Yep.
I mean, even if you've kept up with it over the years, to still try to think of new original ideas. But then for me, if I were to like go in there, I have missed so much. I don't even know how I could possibly catch up.
That's right. That's right. But yeah. So, well, that's I suppose we'll be monitoring the Simpsons situation.
Yeah. And am I wrong? Is Bob's Burgers going over with it?
I thought it was Family Guy.
Oh, okay.
But, but maybe Bob's Burgers too.
Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't know. It doesn't feel quite as doom and gloom as it would for a show that was successful on a Wednesday, and then they're like, let's put it on at Friday.
Sure.
Sort of a thing, maybe more of an experiment.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we know people will kind of follow this anywhere online.
Right.
And I don't
maybe
know.
they're not wrong. Maybe, right? Like,
Yeah.
because maybe you and I are viewing things through a very antiquated lens,
Yeah, kind of a 20th century lens. Yeah.
right? Like, oh, the time slot shift equals death. So, and maybe they're onto something that, I mean, I said this in our last episode. I don't even have YouTube TV anymore.
Yeah, that's right. That's
So
right.
I'm
Well,
watching stuff via streaming, you know?
and what they always tried to do, it seemed, was they knew they had their anchors on Sunday night,
Yeah.
Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, Simpsons, and then they would throw in one new animated show and hope that it caught on, with viewers sticking around from their staples. So maybe they're like, well, we're only able to give one show a chance with that block. So let's break that block up a little bit, and maybe we can give more animated shows the possibility to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see, Brian.
We'll see. The
Either
times
way,
they
we'll
are
be
changing.
we'll be here to talk about it regardless.
Yeah. As a famous artist once said, Timothy Chalamet, the times they are changing.
He's a wise one, that Chalamet.
Yeah.
Wise beyond his years.
Yeah.
Hey, but let us know your thoughts about any of the things we talked about. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. As always, if you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave your review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. And with that in mind, Brian, we do have a Patreon.
That's right. If you head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and subscribe for only $5 a month, you'll find every commentary we've ever done in the past and receive every episode and commentary moving forward absolutely ad-free. And we want to make this available as a way, we're very thankful for our sponsors, but we wanted to provide an alternative way to listen that is ad-free. So it's the most satisfying way to enjoy the show. Plus, your subscription also goes a long way in helping to support us and helping to sustain producing this show. So if you're interested and able, please head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and subscribe. We'd be very grateful.
Thank you so much for that, Brian. And thank you everybody who has supported us up to this point. And truly, it means a lot. And every little bit really does help. So whatever coins you can kick in the bucket, we appreciate.
Yeah, it really does mean a lot. And Zachy, should we mention that I think we're going to have a Patreon exclusive coming up in this next week as an incentive?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, our first ever Patreon exclusive commentary track is going to be for the 1940s version of The Wolfman.
Yeah, as we have Wolfman, the remake, coming into theaters this weekend, and we'll be talking about that next week. For anyone who wants to check that out, subscribe over at patreon.com. And also, if you haven't seen it, I haven't seen it, I'm going to watch it for the first time and then talk about it with Zachy, who knows a lot about these Universal monsters. So check that out, brush up on that, and then head on over and hear us and hear the master. Here's Zachy.
Oh boy.
Enlighten us.
No pressure.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a fun conversation. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zachy's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I'm at Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky. And of course, you can read my reviews at the San Francisco Chronicle, as well as IGN and The Wrap. And Brian, what about you?
As always, episodes I've written of Puppy Dog Pals and Young Jedi Adventures are available to stream on Disney+.
There we go. With that, on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zachy Hassan. This has been Movie Film 308. We'll catch you next time. Thank you, folks.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and